Tonight, the Prime Minister has described the 2026-2027 budget as a turning point, telling the country that financing alone is not enough, and unveiled a new execution model he says will drive Jamaica from resilience to resurgence. But as billions are committed to reconstruction, a different question emerges. Who is protecting the people while that rebuilding takes place? And with tens of thousands of homes damaged or destroyed, is that support keeping pace with need? The minimum wage, we've been told, will rise, but below what was previously promised. And a new agreement has been signed for household workers, a group that sits largely outside the formal protection system. The Minister of Labour and Social Security joins us to discuss these issues. Also tonight, the government tabled legislation for the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, NARA, promising speed, scale and delivery. But can it execute? I'm Jodie Ann Quarry, and this is Lead Story. Yesterday, the nation heard from the Prime Minister, building forward together from resilience to resurgence. That was a title of Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness's Budget Presentation 2026-2027, delivered in the Houses of Parliament yesterday. It was his 11th budget presentation in a row, but the first since Hurricane Melissa reshaped the country's economic and social landscape. He spoke of a nation that had proved its resilience. He spoke of 10 billion Jamaican dollars in grants through the ROOFs program. He spoke of credit ratings maintained and US $6.7 billion in international financing secured. It was in many ways a story of institutional strength. But the untold story is from the floor of a damaged community in Westmoreland. The story of a family with no NHT mortgage, no formal employment, no insurance, and a house that took the storm entirely. Those are the stories tonight that belong to the Minister of Labour and Social Security, helping us understand how that big transformative picture shown by the Prime Minister yesterday now translates to the people on the ground. We'll be having with us shortly inside Lead Story Honourable Colonel Charles Jr., Minister of Labour and Social Security. But until he joins us inside the show, let's take a look now at what the Prime Minister had to say, because there are quite a number of things that he raises about the social protection framework that will now encapsulate so many Jamaicans. The Prime Minister spoke yesterday about the $10 billion in the roofs program, something that many people had heard as part of the signature program provided by Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness after the passage of Hurricane Melissa. Now, you would have been accustomed to the PATH program. It's a foundational way of looking at Jamaican life, the program for advancement through health and education, one that is often associated with our children. But the roofs program was created because of Hurricane Melissa. We've had programs coming out of Hurricane Beryl the year before as well, but this particular one was meant to deal with owner-occupied homes, the restoration of owner or occupant family shelters. That's the name of the program. And we've been told $10 billion has now been allocated to that program. However, the Ministry of Labour and Social Security took lead and took charge of that program, allowing for Jamaicans not only to immediately get aid and assistance after Hurricane Melissa, but also to make sure that they too were in a position to then immediately go to hardware stores, get help and assistance, and have some dignity restored where that was possible. Now, for many people, having this conversation is difficult at a time like this because the roofs program is still underway. Minister Charles has made it very clear that the assessment process is one that is ongoing, that his ministry, the team of people who themselves, when he last spoke to us inside Lead Story, were also impacted by the Hurricane Melissa passage over Jamaica. They too got up and made sure to do those assessments as well, helping so many Jamaicans as they had to figure out how to pull life back together. But we want to be able to help you as well understand what it is that Prime Minister Holness said about those individuals too, who would be able to benefit from programs that already exist, including programs under the National Housing Trust, where individuals would be able to get benefits, moratoriums on their mortgages, or even direct grants. Let's listen to Prime Minister Holness on this, and we'll introduce one of our senior reporters and editor-at-large, Nika Lewis, talking to us now about Prime Minister Holness's description of the help coming from NHT.
A raft of initiatives and offerings for Jamaicans among issues addressed in the Prime Minister's contribution to the 2026-2027 budget debate. But on the matter of housing, Prime Minister Andrew Holness is keying in more incentives for the nation's civil servants and youth.
Effective July 1, 2026, teachers, nurses, firefighters and members of our security forces and defense forces will benefit from a specially reduced mortgage interest rate based on their length of service. For those with 5 to 10 years of service, the applicable interest rate will be reduced by 1%, and for those with service of 10 years or more, the rate will be reduced by 2%. For young Jamaicans under 35, the NHT will reserve a minimum of 20% of scheme units, doubling from the previous allocation of 10%, and will provide an advance of $2 million to assist with deposit requirements for open market purchases.
Jamaica ranks roughly second in the world on the Human Flight and Brain Drain Index, trailing only behind nations experiencing extreme crisis or war, such as Samoa and Palestine.
Jamaica's housing crisis is not a financing crisis, it is a supply crisis. And no amount of money sitting on the NHT's balance sheet will build a single new home without the land, the infrastructure, the approvals, the construction capacity to put it to work. What we need urgently and at scale is a ramping up of housing supply.
He also announced plans to lower the wait period for accessing home improvement loans.
Also effective, July 1, the home improvement loan waiting period will be reduced from 7 to 5 years, giving existing homeowners faster access to funds for maintenance, security, green energy upgrades and expansion. All of these were commitments made in our 2025 manifesto.
But the elephant in the room remains the controversial continued drawdown of funds from the trust by the Holness administration, which struck a chord during the opposition leader's budget address Tuesday.
there has been no issue of misuse or mismanagement of any NHD fund under my administration, like the Outameni scandal under the PNP.
Dr. Holness attempted to clear the air, insisting there's been no misuse and that only about $7 to $7.5 billion of the $11.4 goes to the government.
And so that was Prime Minister Andrew Holness on his feet in Parliament yesterday, speaking and making his contribution to the 2026 to 2027 budget debate. Now, Prime Minister Holness is doing this after we have heard from Opposition Leader Mark Golding on Tuesday, Opposition Spokesman on Finance last Thursday, and the person who opened and will close the budget debate next week, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Favour Williams. Now, this is within a larger context, the Prime Minister says, that we're looking at, a context in which Jamaica has been able to make it out of Hurricane Melissa thanks to the deep discipline of our people. And that allows us to have these programs like the Roofs program and others, including, as we heard yesterday, an increase in the minimum wage. But this is within the context as well of international financial agencies looking at us and then seeing how it is that we've been able to make it through this difficult time. Let's take a listen to the Prime Minister yesterday.
Madam Speaker, I want to point out that in the weeks immediately following Hurricane Melissa, something extraordinary happened. A moment when countries would have faced downgrades, economic uncertainty, and capital flight. All three major international credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, reaffirmed Jamaica's sovereign standing with stable outlook. And Moody's went even further. They upgraded us. Now, can you imagine? After a hurricane, the rating agency said, well, you know, even with the hurricane, you have done so well. I'm going to maintain your outlook. Yeah. I just want everyone to stop and reflect on that for a moment. It sent a powerful signal to the world that Jamaica's resilience, note the word no, not stability, Jamaica's resilience, which is what we have put into the economy, is not only social and emotional, meaning our people's ability to withstand disaster, but it is also institutional in the agencies that we have created in terms of fiscal and economic. That credibility wasn't gifted to us, it was earned through years of disciplined, courageous reform and sound governance. And it has now become an asset we are deploying in the service of every Jamaican. And the results are already visible. The recovery from Hurricane Melissa is proceeding faster than anyone initially projected. But speed of recovery does not happen by accident. It is a product of fiscal strength deliberately built and strategically deployed. Consider what that means in practice. Within weeks, the government extended a loan of $150 million to the Jamaica Public Service Company to support the immediate restoration of electricity across the island. That single intervention accelerated the reconnection of communities, businesses, hospitals, and the resumption of daily rhythm of life that so many Jamaicans depend on. Today, electricity and water have been restored to approximately 99% of customers.
And that's Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness yesterday in his contribution to the 2026 to 2027 budget debate, making the connection between years of fiscal discipline here in Jamaica and the things we can pay for in or aim to get over Hurricane Melissa. We'll take a break here inside Lead Story and come back to you on CVM Television.
Most people buy property and hope for the best. At Stella Global, we don't don't believe in hope. We believe in strategy. I'm Tiffany Gray. Join us March 27th through the 29th. Paradisiac Sip and See. This isn't just a tour. It's a wealth summit designed to save you thousands on your purchase. Meet our lenders, attorneys, and experts to learn how smart money invests in Jamaica. Ticket on sale at StellaBubbaRealty.com.
Can you do this?
Jamaica's unemployment rate has fallen to 3.3%, down from 13.2% in 2016. Our government's continued focus on job creation is delivering real results. We are building Jamaica. The Time by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Thanks so much for staying with us inside Lead Story this evening. Now we're looking at social protections under the speech that had been made by Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness and more fulsomely after the passage of Hurricane Melissa here in Jamaica. There's a lot going on in the country. We wanted to take you through some of the big announcements that had been made in Parliament yesterday as we look to see what it is that you can look forward to. Let me run you through some of those big numbers that came out of the speech yesterday, because those will be things that for the next few months or even years you might remember. Now, the Prime Minister not only spoke about the direct financial benefits to citizens, something that we were going to be having a conversation with Minister of Labour and Social Security, Colonel Charles Jr. on. Unfortunately, unable to have him on the program at this moment, but we're continuing to work on that, making sure that we can see the direct contributions to persons as they deal with the fallout from Hurricane Melissa and potentially the global fallout. Now, let's talk about some of the big things here that we can look at. The Heart Trust NSTA fees abolished up to level 5. So that is information there saying a bachelor's degree equivalent for those in the most challenging circumstances are now available. NHT mortgage interest rates reduced by 1% to teachers, as you heard, nurses, firefighters, and security defense personnel with 5 to 10 years of service, and 2% for those with 10 plus years of service. That comes into effect on July 1 of this year. But there have already been questions, including why just these people? Others have been impacted. Why not broaden that social net? NHG housing allocation that the Prime Minister also spoke of a moment ago, indicating that those under 35 had now a 20% allotment, now doubled from 10% of units, up to $2 million advance for their security deposits as well. NHT home improvement loans, they're a lot for NHT beneficiaries. One of the questions that we were going to put to the Minister of Labour and Social Security was, what about even more vulnerable people, those who rent, those who don't have access to an NHT loan, who don't have stable housing, who won't be able to benefit from the ROOS program directly, but they are most likely to be dispossessed after the passage of something as significant as Hurricane Melissa, and now the economic displacement thanks to the loss of jobs, especially in the western end of the island. But one of the big institutional impacts that the Prime Minister has spoken of is NARA. And we'll be speaking about that for weeks and even months to come, because the National Resilience and Reconstruction Authority is something that has been back and forth in the news for weeks now, with opposition spokesman on finance, Julian Robinson, saying that it was a great idea, but with nothing on the table for it. And now Mark Golding on Tuesday echoing those sentiments, indicating that NARA could not be the body carrying out the reconstruction work of this nation if it had no legislation before Parliament. Well, yesterday, Prime Minister Holness indicated he was laying the NARA bill now before Parliament and talking to us about the importance of this new body. Let's take a listen.
Speaker, this government is leveraging our national resilience and international confidence in order to translate it into a platform for accelerated national development. Through close engagement with our multilateral partners, including the IMF, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, CAF, and the Caribbean Development Bank, Jamaica secured US $6.7 billion in terms of a financial package within weeks of the hurricane. This is the largest and fastest mobilization of development financing in Jamaica's history, and it was made possible not by the hurricane, but by everything Jamaica had built before it. Madam Speaker, the discipline of yesterday is funding the resurgence of tomorrow. But financing alone is not enough. We must, as a country, confront an uncomfortable reality. While Jamaica has built one of the most credible macroeconomic frameworks in the developing world, the execution of large investment projects too often moves at a pace that belongs in another era. Layers of approvals, fragmented processes, and rigid procurement rules, though designed with good intention, can make it difficult to move quickly when transformational opportunities arise. In today's global economy, capital is highly mobile, and investors compare jurisdictions not only on stability and incentives, but on speed of decision-making and certainty of execution. Too often, promising opportunities have gone elsewhere, to countries that are simply more nimble. We cannot allow this to continue. Even recently, Madam Speaker, I have seen projects that were eyeing Jamaica. Investors got frustrated and have gone elsewhere. We are advancing two powerful and complementary reforms. One focused on how we build infrastructure, and the other on how we attract and accelerate transformational private investments. NARA will have special powers, that is the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, will have special powers to accelerate development approvals as well as procurement, enabling the execution of resilient infrastructure projects at a scale and speed this country has never seen before. NARA is not only about project delivery, it is about project networking to create new economies in areas impacted by the disaster and to introduce the greatest expansion of our economy in the shortest period of time in our history.
The greatest expansion in the shortest period of time in Jamaica's history. That's what Prime Minister Andrew Holness said on the floor of Parliament as he made his contribution to the 2026 to 2027 budget debate. It's so important for you to hear those words because NARA is being touted as the answer to the problems that we have. That line by Prime Minister Holness there a few moments ago, financing is not enough, is consequential. The Prime Minister recognizing that we've been able to finance projects. We've been able to bring money in, even where he says that there might have been difficulties with capital flight or individuals deciding not to invest in us. For the most part, we have the ability to bring money in. What we have a bottleneck with is execution, and NARA is expected to be the answer to that problem. problem. Now, NARA comes with a whole list of projects and a responsibility for the new chief executive officer. Later on, the Prime Minister says the CEO has not yet been selected, but there's a short list of candidates and they expect to now settle on the CEO very soon. But NARA's legislation was laid in the House of Parliament yesterday. I still don't have sight of it. None of us inside Lead Story just yet have seen this legislation, what it says, what it constitutes, what the back and forth will have to be as this bill now is laid. And it goes through the process of a bill becoming a law. This integration with the government and the opposition as they continue to hammer out the details of the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority. It's going to be important. But some of the projects that are under this NARA listing that the Prime Minister says the CEO will have to deal with when put in place, because there's not yet a CEO in place, includes Vernon Field Light. If you're anywhere over the age of 35, you might have heard Vernon Field's name called every single year, at least most years in a budget. Well, Vernon Field Light is now one of those projects. A new KPH, a government campus, a St. Thomas Port, a Port Antonio bypass, a Caymanas SEZ, Fast Jamaica, a whole new program we'll talk about in a few moments, STEAM schools, a beach access policy that the Prime Minister held up yesterday, indicating that the Beach Control Act of 1956, that's pre-independence legislation, is something that will have to be amended. These amendments have been asked for quite a long time, but he instead yesterday said a new policy will be considering some of the new 2026-like issues that have now been raised with access to the beaches, use of the beaches, and even what constitutes a beach here in Jamaica. He's also talked about the urban renewal framework overhaul and a big one, the One Road Authority, something that by the end of April we should be getting more and more information on as a deadline for that comes to an end. Now, they were all announced in a single presentation, a big, wide-ranging presentation. Unfortunately, though, the Prime Minister did not share with us which one would come first and how much all of that would cost as we're looking at these things. What's the sequencing? What's the prioritization of all of these things? And specific capital allocations, we look forward then to see if if the Minister of Finance on Tuesday gives us more of that information while we're there. Now, Fast Jamaica is also something that has been mentioned. The Fast Jamaica framework, which fast tracks projects of US $150 million or more with cabinet retaining oversight. That's one of the things the Prime Minister has spoken of as well, and that's also raised governance challenges for individuals. But a big governance framework is also part of what the Prime Minister has spoken of for this. Jamrock. I know you're going to be sick of all of the new abbreviations that you have, but Jamrock is the oversight body established to take a look at what NARA is doing with the new legislation. All of that, though, in the coming weeks and months will be old hat to you as we continue to deep dive in the announcements that have been made by the Prime Minister and the government in the 2026 to 2027 budget debate. We'll take a break here inside Lead Story and come back to you with more here on CVM Television.
It's no scam and not style me.
From the market to the farm to the office, money talk is everywhere. But are you making sense or nonsense? The Bank of Jamaica brings you common sense with BOJ, real stories, real laughs, and real lessons to help you protect, grow, and manage your money. Mattress savings.
At least my mattress. You charge me to sleep on it.
Partner plan.
Remember last year we needed our payouts early, but Miss Pam gave it to her cousin first?
Or a sketchy loan flyer.
electrifying deals.
See why making the right financial choices is pure common sense. Brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, empowering everyday Jamaicans one episode at a time.
Grandpa, it's 2026. You can't keep hiding all your money in every single pocket forever.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
If you're a woman in business, it's time to go bigger.
Your ambition is calling, and Horizon for Women in Business is answering.
Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services designed for women entrepreneurs to unlock the capital you need to grow and take your business beyond limits. With quick approval, flexible repayment, and low interest rates, your success is on the horizon.
Call us now. The funds are waiting.
Your success is on the horizon.
Jamaica, make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out, don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
Hey, what I want?
Hi, I am Candy Pang.
What I want?
What I want?
That I want.
What I want?
What I want?
What I want? Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
That I want. What I
want? Every dream conquered is another dream game. I land and I fly again like a jet plane.
Welcome back to Lead Story. The Prime Minister has said that Jamaicans' problem is no longer financing, but execution. And you heard Prime Minister Holness say that as he tabled legislation for the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, NARA. He went on to describe it as a center of technical excellence, a single point of national coordination, and a mechanism to deliver infrastructure at a scale and speed Jamaica has never seen before. It's being presented as a cultural and structural shift, with special powers to accelerate projects, centralize decision-making, and crowd in private capital. He's also announced that new abbreviation I told you about, JAMROC, the Jamaica Reconstruction and Resilience Oversight Committee, as the transparency model, and FAST Jamaica, FAST, the facilitated acceleration of strategic transformation to speed up major investment projects of US $150 million or more that can begin within a year. Now, abbreviations galore, but these are consequential words and they carry consequential questions. Because, as I told you, NARA is still in its interim departmental phase. Its chief executive officer, not yet appointed. And that CEO himself has now a weight on their shoulders as they come into the office. And the Prime Minister has acknowledged that slow approvals, fragmented procurement, and a shortage of enterprise-scale contractors have historically prevented Jamaica from converting ambition into reality. So, you're seeing this big structural shift with special powers that are being put on the table to accelerate projects, centralize decision making, and do all of this. But is it gonna actually work? Now, Jamrock is being indicated as something that will be similar to epoch. I know you're hearing more and more of these words, but let me walk you through this as we now solve some technical glitches here and allow for you to, one, appreciate what it is that the Prime Minister said yesterday, and two, if we're able to bring our guests into this conversation. Now, the oversight body, Jamrock, that's the Jamaica Reconstruction and Resilience Oversight Committee, that will be chaired by an eminent professor, Professor Peter Blair Henry, a son of Jamaica and a senior fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution, a vice chair of the National Bureau of Economic Research, and a member of the boards of Citigroup and Nike. He is heading a body that is meant to replicate EPOC, the Economic Program Oversight Committee that gave Jamaicans and international partners confidence during the fiscal reform years. It's meant to be that hand-holding organization that makes sure that we don't veer off the path that we are now going on. And it will be important if it is able to do so. But here's a question that EPOC didn't have to answer. Jamrock is going to have to deal with it. EPOC monitored a fiscal program. That is, we were on an economic program. There were things that were required of us in that. Jamrock must now monitor physical delivery. It must fix the problem that the Prime Minister has said is a bottleneck. It must make sure that there are actual roads, that there are actual schools, that there are actual hospitals, housing, and coastal defences that have been announced by the Prime Minister today in parishes that Melissa levelled. So it's not even in places that you have good construction operations in place. These are places that have been damaged. And these are fundamentally different accountability challenges that Jamrock faces that EPOC didn't have to. The Prime Minister himself put the finger on a problem, saying and acknowledging that Jamaica, and I'll quote what he said here, is in an overly bureaucratic country with supply-side weaknesses that constrain our growth horizon. Now, he said that, citing low investment appraisal, fragmented procurement, and a shortage of what we will need to build these big projects. Enterprise-scale contractors as a structural cases of Jamaica's chronic capital under-execution problem. Now, that's been something that the opposition has highlighted. We received a report last year indicating that in our capital budget, we set aside money to spend to improve infrastructure here in Jamaica. And we didn't spend all of it. And so we want to make sure that we are in a position to this year to be able to do so. All right. So social development here in Jamaica, though, requires those schools and those hospitals to be back up and running. And the Minister with responsibility for making sure that Labour and Social Security are safe and taken care of while we have this move from resilience to resurgence is Minister Colonel Charles Jr. Minister Charles, thanks so much for joining us inside Lead Story. Minister Charles is coming in now, and we're making sure that we can have that conversation with him inside the show, because it's important for us to highlight for you how what the Prime Minister has said about the projects will now be coordinated. Minister Charles, thanks so much for joining us inside Lead Story. Yes, I am. Thank you so much.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, Minister Charles, thank you so very much for joining us inside Lead Story.
What?
Mr. Charles, thanks so much for joining us.
Still not hearing you.
Oh no, Minister Charles, let's solve that with our technical team so that we can clearly hear you inside Lead Story as we speak with you about the development path between the announcements that had been made by Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness yesterday and what it is that it will mean on the ground for so many Jamaicans who will not only be looking for the big construction items, but they'll be also looking at the impact on their own lives. So there have been commitments that had been made, like the national minimum wage that had been raised in the election campaign by the Jamaica Labour Party before they won their third consecutive term, with Prime Minister Dr. Holness saying that he would have moved the minimum wage from $16,000 to $18,500 in his next budget. But yesterday, Dr. Holness indicated that Hurricane Melissa raised concerns around that, citing rebuilding costs, rising energy prices as context for that reduced increase. And we have heard from small business associations, but also others who said they welcome that smaller change, indicating that they understand the need for Jamaicans to get more money in their pockets, but they too are struggling post-Hurricane Melissa. So we'll be speaking with Minister Charles in a moment to help us better understand some of the programs that the Prime Minister has spoken to us about, including that roofs program. That's a big one that's under Minister Charles's portfolio, and will also be a critical test for Jamaica's ability to execute. If roofs is a program that is going to be handing out money and vouchers for persons to go to hardware stores and to improve the homes in which they live, it will be a small testing ground for the much more ambitious projects that we have on our plate, especially thanks to NARA, thanks to Fast Jamaica, and now to that oversight body we have called Jamrock. And these will continue to be words that you'll be hearing over the next few weeks and months, but we're waiting to see now how that is going to work. All right, we have with us once again Minister Pernell Charles Jr., Minister of Labour and Social Security. Minister Charles, thank you so very much for joining us inside Lead Story.
Yes, good evening. I've been waiting. Glad that I'm getting a chance to be on.
I am grateful that you have waited, Minister. We had a challenge, and I am so grateful that you spend the extra time with us.
No, well, I heard it was you on us. So I had no choice.
Oh my goodness, that's the spirit. Minister Charles, it's good to welcome you back inside Lead Story. Last we spoke, you talked to us about the roofs program at the very beginning, right after Hurricane Melissa. Talk to us about it now, because the Prime Minister yesterday cited the $10 billion that has now been allocated to the restoration of owner or occupant family shelters. It's under your Ministry for Control. Where are we with it?
So you would know that we have been to several parishes: St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Hanover, St. Anne, Trelawney. And that is a ceremonial representation of the process of the money being distributed to the beneficiaries who have been waiting in different modalities. Primarily, the persons who are within the major and severe categories are receiving QR codes to their phone or text messages to their phone. And then they use those to go to one of the participating merchants, and they can collect their items from there. Of course, as you should know by now, $75,000 of those portions, 200 and 500,000 respectively, they have the choice to do whatever they want with it in terms of cashing it out or using it for material as they wish. For the minor, they are receiving text messages as well, giving them guidance as to which remittance agency to go to, or those who came to ceremonies might have received prepaid cards, and a few of our pensioners receive direct deposit. Now, one of the things we've realized as we go through this process, first time ever, is the need to expand the network of hardwares and participating merchants. And so every single day we are onboarding more hardwares, more merchants to help us to facilitate redemption of the money to the point where we have now been able to send out more than $5.2 billion. And by Monday, I should be able to confirm the total amount of up to 8 billion of the 10 billion being dispersed to our provider to now get it out to the beneficiaries.
I think that's so important for us to hear, Minister Charles, because for many people, $10 billion is a big chunk of cash. They wanted to know where we were with the spend of it, and you've just answered that big question. Let's take a quick break here inside Lead Story and come back to you here on CVM Television. Thanks so much for staying with us inside Lead Story. We're joined by Minister of Labour and Social Security, Colonel Charles Jr., as he speaks with us about important programs that are now going to be helping Jamaicans recover after Hurricane Melissa. And Minister Charles was speaking to us a moment ago about the roofs program. Minister Charles, $8 billion now confirmed about on Monday that has been spent of the $10 billion. But help us understand how people were chosen. Is it a means-tested component, or is it every single damaged household eligible regardless of income, insurance, or NHG status?
Excellent question. You go to a good school.
St. Jude's High School continues to be proud of it, Minister.
I'm telling you. So, of course, those persons that are homeowners that have insurance, we would expect that they tap into their insurance, so they wouldn't be eligible or ought not to be eligible. Those persons who have residences that are used for commercial purposes, renting out, that's not family shelter, that's a business. So you wouldn't be eligible in those circumstances generally.
Because it's the restoration of owner or occupant family shelters.
Family shelter. And so what we do is, or what we have done is we have done more than 100,000 household assessments to determine the status of the household, whether impacted or not. And we capture 5 categories: no damage, no significant damage, minor, major, and severe. And so not everybody that's assessed will get, but those persons that are assessed and fall within the minor, major, or severe categories can fall within the roofs program, which is that $10 billion initial allocation for you to get the grant. If you don't fall within that category, you might fall within one of the other categories under the shelter recovery program, which may mean, for instance, if the NHT has given you a grant, then you wouldn't expect to get a grant under roofs. If you're going to get one of the container solutions, then that would be your solution. You wouldn't be getting a grant. And those are the temporary houses that are now set up for individuals who can have access to those as well? Yeah, well, yes, the modular solutions. For some it will be temporary, for some it will be semi-permanent. And if you, for instance, had JDF come to your house and bring material and actually do the repair, then that would be your solution under the shelter recovery program. There are 6 elements under the shelter recovery program, and the roofs, which is the grant, is one of the 6, and it is one benefit per household. So you would have to determine which one of the benefits are best for you. So if you are, for instance, a senior citizen and you don't have any assistance, then getting the grant might not be the best thing for you. The best support might be the solution where JDF comes in and actually puts on your roof. And so we utilize two main principles. One is to prioritize severity, meaning we try to support the needs of the persons who have been most greatly affected first. And the second principle is targeting vulnerability, which means it doesn't matter whether you're minor, major, or severe. If you have a significant vulnerability, like if you're a person with disability or a senior citizen who needs help, then you are also given a priority, which means most of whom fall within the 8 billion are within the major and the severe category, but you do have a number of them who fall into minor because they have additional vulnerabilities.
And so this classification you're giving is important because minor damage gets 75,000 Jamaican dollars, major damage $200,000 with $75,000 allocated for basic needs, and extreme or total loss gets 500,000. You said that you were supposed to be on Monday getting information that would allow us to see how your providers would now be able to disperse up to 8 billion of that 10 billion that had been allocated. Does that mean that people don't yet have the money in their hands?
Yes, that's exactly what it means. So many persons do not yet have the money in their hands. Because the first step is for us to send it to the provider and then they send out the QR codes. What we can tell you is at least 5.2 billion has been sent out. That we know for sure. We have done that. But by Monday, it should move up to 8 billion because we're going through the process, which is a very important process for accountability, of cleaning the list. What that means very quickly is when you are assessed as being impacted within one of the three, which is minor, major, or severe, we take your information and then we have to send that to the National Spatial Data Management Branch for them to make sure that there's no duplication. What we don't want is to have one person named Pernell Charles being in 2 households or 2 households assigned to one person.
Given that your name is Pernell Charles Jr., it is very interesting that you choose this particular name to say that there are no 2 Pernell Charleses in household. But that matters to prevent fraud.
Let me tell you how we stop that. So Pernell Charles Sr. and Pernell Charles Jr. have different IDs. And so it's the head of the household that is signed up. And when you, even if Pernell Charles Jr. gets the grant on his phone, when he goes to the merchant, that merchant, when they scan the grant, it's going to pop up as requiring Pernell Charles Sr. to be present. And it will require a picture to be taken. So we use many different means to ensure that we reduce the fraudulent behavior. MOCA is also involved with helping us to ensure that they can respond quickly in terms of investigation and detection. And this digital modality gives us the flexibility of managing. We can ring fence what kind of products you can utilize and purchase. We can ring fence when this will expire, which is why I use this platform to tell all who are watching and listening, if you have received a QR code, if you have received a text message, go and get your material now. Do not wait.
Don't wait because when it expires, too bad, so sad shall be the cry. Minister, you're talking about homeowners though, and the roofs program is specifically targeted to those. But there are even more vulnerable people, those who rent, those who don't then have the ability to go to get an NHT grant or to access anything under the roofs program. Is there anything for renters, people who are economically disadvantaged, who don't yet own property, who aren't able to use any of these programs? What can they do if they've been impacted by Hurricane Melissa?
Excellent interrogation, Council. Yes, the persons who rent, they automatically fall within the minor category once they can show and establish that there is damage. Because they're not the homeowners, we maintain them only in that category as a means of helping them to be able to find somewhere else or to give them a boost through the period within which they will need
that's
support.
That's the $75,000 that they have access to then?
Yes, yes. And we also, in addition to all of this, want persons to remember that the roofs program is only one of the several forms of support that the Ministry of Labour provides. I mean, we have provided hundreds of thousands of food packages, mattresses, and several other forms of support. So it's not to be seen in isolation, but as a comprehensive set of elements which form all of the support given by the government of Jamaica, by our partners, by our private sector, by our international support. And the bottom line is that, we still give thanks to the World Bank, who has said that even though there are many who might want it and deserve it faster, Jamaica's response is world leading. And it's world leading because we've put in place the mechanisms and the modalities to do as good as we can with as little as we can.
And I think that's important for persons to understand that, having not then experienced something like Hurricane Melissa before, we had to build these programs. But there's still checks and balances that have to be put in place, and there's still going to be a lot of oversight that the media will provide. Minister, before you go though, one of the big announcements coming out of Prime Minister Holness's presentation yesterday was an increase in the national minimum wage, moving it from $16,000 to $17,000. This is less though than the campaign promise that had been made by the Jamaica Labour Party. The Prime Minister indicated that Hurricane Melissa business rebuilding costs and rising energy prices were the reason for it. But those are the conditions that make people on minimum wage have a harder life rather than easier. Is $17,000 a livable wage in 2026, Minister?
What it is the government's, our active process of meeting the commitment of moving towards the livable wage. And as we said to the country, we're going to take steps and take step by step to make sure that we have a measurable action, that we are accountable, but that whatever we do doesn't set us back. I'm just glad to be living in a time where we can go through a hurricane and still raise minimum wage. I mean, I want everyone to think about what we've just gone through in terms of Category 5. And the government, your government, because of the decisions that have been made, is still in a position to say we are going to raise minimum wage, if it's even by $1,000. And that's the commitment we've made, to move towards a trajectory of a livable wage that will allow every worker in Jamaica to meet their basic needs and to live with dignity, not just to survive. We're not there yet, but we are on our way.
All right. Well, we'll certainly be looking forward not only to more programs announced, but also the execution of these programs. Minister Colonel Charles Jr., Minister of Labour and Social Security, thank you for your time tonight inside Lead Story. It was a brief conversation there with Minister Charles, given the technical issues, but we're so glad to have had him on, explaining to us that RUSE program, explaining the justification behind the increase in the national minimum wage, why it wasn't as high as it was asked for, but all of that to say it was good to have you with us inside Lead Story. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and on behalf of the entire CVM production team, thank you for watching today's edition of Lead Story. Have a fantastic evening.